12 Most Evil Parents in History. Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Why the Fact, not coming to all of you with a brand new video. Evil comes in many forms, but it is perhaps most sickening when it appears in a parent who is supposed to be looking after a child. Children look to their parents as a source of love, but these 12 entries show that some parents prefer to do the exact opposite. Instead of love, they provide torture and abuse, stunting their children in a way that satisfies their own evil desires. Child abuse is a horrifying occurrence that happens far too often. But these pairs and parents take it one step further, inflicting the kind of emotional, sexual, and physical abuse that goes beyond cruel and unusual to just plain evil. Some of these entries are graphic in nature, so be warned that the 12 following entries may be disturbing. Number 12. Jotrude Banistewski. The crimes of Jotrude Banistewski have been discussed at length and put on screen in the form of the film An American Crime starring Ellen Page. While she never harmed her own children to the extent she did the girl she took in, Banistewski was definitely one of the most evil parents in history. In the 1960s in Indiana, Banistewski was mother to 7 children, miscarried 6, and abandoned by her latest boyfriend. To earn some extra cash, Banistewski took in Sylvia and Jenny Likens after their father promised to send her $20 a week for their care. For whatever reason, Banistewski turned on Sylvia, beating her, burning her with cigarettes and scalding water, forcing her to eat her own vomit and feces, forcing her to insert a Coca-Cola bottle into her vagina, and carving "I'm a prostitute" and proud of it on her abdomen. However, Banistewski didn't commit these crimes alone. She called upon her children and neighborhood kids to torture and eventually kill Sylvia in what has been called the most terrible crime ever committed in the state of Indiana. Number 11. Casey Anthony. She may be a woman who currently walks free, but Casey Anthony is easily one of the most reviled parents in history. Although she was acquitted of the 2008 murder of her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee, Anthony's actions immediately following Kaylee's disappearance is what still convinces much of the public of her guilt. Initially, Anthony claimed that Kaylee had been kidnapped by a nanny, although no such nanny existed. Anthony had also told her parents that she had not seen Kaylee in weeks, although she didn't look like she was too worried. Multiple pictures even showed the young mother partying at nightclubs and even participating in a hot body contest. Documents were also released that showed Anthony's internet history, which contained searches for how to make chloroform. Hardly the picture of sorrow or agony, public opinion turned against Anthony, who many saw as having suffocated her daughter, wrapped her in a garbage bag, and dumped her body in order to rid herself of her parental responsibilities. Number 10. James and Sandra Davis. Instead of asking for $10,000 for sexually abusing their daughter like Felicia Ray McClure, James and Sandra Davis were content with a much lower price, just enough to pay off the '98 Dodge minivan they wanted to purchase back in 2010. The remaining cost on the van, $281. The couple offered to allow the dealership's 66-year-old manager to have sex with their 14-year-old daughter, who was 12 when the negotiations began, in lieu of payments. But the Davis couple, being the sick, twisted people that they were, also helped themselves to their daughter and were subsequently charged with child molestation. Police in Eastman, Georgia also believe that the couple happily sold their daughter to anyone who would ask in exchange for drugs. Since pimping out their daughter, both of the Davises have been sentenced to prison while their daughter was put in foster care. Since even inmates have a sense of what is right and wrong, James Davis was beaten badly enough in 2011 by another inmate who heard of his crimes that he was hospitalized. Number 9. Lacey Spears. There's doing it for the gram, and then there's people like Lacey Spears, who take their social media obsession and need for approval way too far, with fatal consequences. On Facebook, Spears documented the struggles she and her son, Garnet, endured due to the child's multiple mysterious illnesses, gaining sympathy and attention from friends and followers. In 2014, 5-year-old Garnet died while in the hospital after a lethal dose of sodium in the form of table salt was injected into his IV. The lethal dose was administered by Spears and was fortunately caught on camera. A forensic toxicologist testified at Spears' trial that the little boy had the equivalent of 69 bags of McDonald's salt in his system, which caused his brain to swell and ultimately led to his death. While Spears was only sentenced to 20 years to life because of the judge's belief that she was suffering from Munchausen by proxy, which causes a parent of caretaker to purposefully hurt their child for attention. Spears has continued to maintain her innocence. Number 8. Magdalena Luczak. called a campaign of cruelty by newspapers and networks the torture of Daniel Pelka at the hands of his mother, Magdalena Luczak, and her boyfriend, Marius Kroke, began when Daniel was only 3.5. Luczak and Kroke routinely starved the boy, but not his sibling, and encouraged his sibling to lie to authorities about what was going on. They also informed Daniel's school that he was being treated for a rare eating disorder and that they were not to feed him. If they had only known what was happening, they would have learned that Daniel suffered from regular brutal beatings, was locked in a room, had his head forced under water in a bath, and was force-fed salt. He eventually died of a head injury and was so malnourished at the time of his death. He weighed only 23 pounds. There is no clear reason as to why Luczak committed her crimes and allowed her boyfriend to do the same. But there must have been some guilt. In January of 2016, she hung herself in her prison cell on what would have been her son's 8th birthday. Number 7. Megan Huntsman. It takes a sick, disturbed individual to murder his or her own children, and arguably only a person with no grip on reality, or else a truly evil heart, could commit that sort of crime multiple times to children who had just taken their first breath. Such was the case of Utah's Megan Huntsman, who was charged with killing 6 of her own newborn babies, another was stillborn, and concealing their bodies in her garage. It was Huntsman's estranged husband who made the discovery of the bodies wrapped in plastic bags and packed into boxes when he was attempting to clean out the garage. Huntsman said that the murders, which took place over a 10-year period from 1996 to 2006, were spurred by her addictions to meth and alcohol, as well as her struggles with depression. At the time of the murders, Huntsman already had other children who were alive and healthy and in fact defended her in court. Despite all this murderous mother was given 30 years before the possibility of parole. Number 6. Rachel Trelfa and Naomi Fee. The couple had 3 children together, but biological mother Rachel Trelfa and her civil partner Naomi Fee seemed to take out most of their anger on toddler Liam Fee. Liam, along with his brothers, was regularly threatened, locked in a cage, forced to eat dog feces and vomit, beaten, and left to endure the agony of broken bones with no medical attention. Ultimately, 2-year-old Liam succumbed to his heart injuries, which were said to be similar to those found in car crash victims. Both Trelfa and Fee showed no remorse for their actions. Fee even claimed that she would be the top girl in prison who would be taking the place over. Twisted would be an understatement to describe the parents of little Liam, who were given the longest minimum prison sentences ever handed out to a woman in Scotland, 23.5 years for Trelfa and 24 for Fee. After the horrendous atrocities they inflicted on their child, however, we'd say that that amount of time is hardly long enough. Number 5. Mansa Musa Muhammad. Considered one of the most notorious child abuse cases in California history, the 19 children of polygamist Mansa Musa Muhammad suffered for decades at the hands of their father. Dubbed as a reign of terror, one of Muhammad's children described their living conditions as being like that of a concentration camp, where they would be locked in a basement for days at a time and beaten, paid, and starved. The children were so malnourished and stunted in growth that one daughter was 18 and only 48 pounds, while another, who was 19, stood at 4'1" and 56 pounds. Coerced into abusing the children were Muhammad's 3 wives, who feared for their own lives, and so would reluctantly take part in the abuse of their own children. The manipulation and fear inflicted on all members of the family by Muhammad was arguably worse than the physical abuse. Muhammad, for his part, showed no remorse for his twisted behavior, even after being handed 7 life sentences, with eligibility for parole in 65 years. Here's number 4. Mitchell Blair. As a mother of 4, Mitchell Blair decided to murder 2 of her children because she considered them to be demons and that she would kill them again because of her belief that they were sexually abusing her younger son. Although there was no evidence of sexual assault and no police reports were filed by Blair or anyone else on this matter. While all 4 children were routinely subjected to abuse at the hands of Blair, it was only her daughter Stoney and son Stephen who met their end. Blair strangled both children before suffocating them with plastic bags and showed no emotion or remorse for her actions. She even enlisted the help of one of her children to put the body of Stoney in the freezer. Sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, Blair was cold in her explanation of her feelings after the deaths of her own children. "I don't feel no emotion for the death of them demons." Number 3. Joseph Fritzl. It was the case that shook the world for the sheer volume of its victims. the length of the crimes, and the dark secrets that emerged. It has become the subject of documentaries and was rumored to be the inspiration behind the award-winning book and film, Room. The Joseph Fritzl case emerged in 2008 when Elisabeth Fritzl informed Austrian police that she had been held captive by her father for 24 years and regularly arped and beaten. She gave birth to 7 children while in captivity, 4 of whom stayed with her, and 3 of whom joined her father and mother as foundlings. After he trapped Elisabeth in his homemade chamber, Fritz faked her disappearance by saying she had run away, using letters he'd forced Elisabeth to write as proof. It was only when Elisabeth's eldest daughter, Kirsten, fell ill with kidney failure that Elisabeth was able to see the outside world and eventually tell police of her time in captivity. Fritz was sentenced to a minimum of 15 years in prison in 2009. Number 2. Felicia Ray McClure. Parents are supposed to protect their children. So how can we possibly explain a woman who, while not trying to harm her child, was willing to hand her over to someone who would? That's the case of Felicia Ray McClure, who in 2011 offered to sell her 13-year-old daughter's virginity for a cool $10,000. In order to further appeal to the seller, who was only identified as Dawn and with whom she had been communicating for 2 months, McClure would have her young daughter model underwear from Victoria's Secret so that she could take pictures of her, which she would send to Dawn, as well as to another man for money. Fortunately for McClure's daughter, McClure's boyfriend spotted the text exchange on her phone and alerted the authorities. McClure was charged with 2 counts of aggravated sexual abuse of a child and 2 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. One thing we don't need a jury to decide, that she's evil and sick. Lastly, number 1. Fred and Rosemary West. There have been a lot of evil parents on this list, and ranking them is almost impossible, since it's difficult to measure the degree of vile behavior committed by these people who are given a duty to protect their children. However, there is perhaps no pair so despicable as Fred and Rosemary West. Fred West had begun his life as a serial killer before meeting Rosemary. He was responsible for murdering and dismembering his 18-year-old pregnant girlfriend, Anne McFall. Fred met Rosemary when she was 15 and he was 28. The couple were poisoned together, going on a spree of murders that included Fred's daughter with his first wife, the couple's daughter, Heather, and a couple of women hired by the duo to care for their children, 10 in all. They also regularly abused their children, with Rose and Fred both feeling that it was their right to inflict such physical and sexual torture. The house on Cromwell Street, known as a House of Horrors, was demolished in 1996, and Fred asphyxiated himself while in prison the year before. Rose was convicted of 10 murders and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And that is it, guys. This is the 12 most evil parents in history. Hope you all liked this video, and please don't forget to smash that like button. And you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and also hit that notification bell so you will be updated on my next video upload. Mega love shout out to my premier team, Team Hainan and Team Warriors, and all its very active and supportive members. This is why the fact not see you all on my next video. Thank you for watching.